My name is Anna. I'm only 25 years old, while my husband has already turned 40. We've been married for 4 years and have a little son together, just turned 3. Our life used to be so peaceful. Despite the significant age gap, back then he always made me feel protected, understood, and deeply loved. When we first got married, everything was filled with warmth. We always made time for each other, even if it was just sitting down with a cup of tea or quietly watching our baby sleep. I used to believe that the age difference was exactly what brought us balance. He was calm, I was spirited, we complemented each other perfectly. But lately, I've started to feel that something is shifting. He comes home later, speaks less, and seems completely detached from everything around him. He eats in silence, never asking me how my day was, then spends hours staring at the TV without saying a word. After that, he goes to bed, leaving me alone in the quiet kitchen. We used to share everything, both joy and sorrow. But now, I can't even remember the last time he truly looked into my eyes. I feel like a shadow in my own home. He's physically present, yet it feels as if he's living in another world, one where my son and I are no longer a part of his priorities. I've tried to understand, tried to be patient, but with each passing day, one thing becomes more and more clear. He is slowly withdrawing from our life, and that makes my heart heavier than ever. In the past, our evenings were something I deeply cherished. After our son had fallen asleep, he would often pour 2 cups of hot tea and pull out the wooden chair near the balcony. We would sit side by side, quietly listening to the night, sharing random stories that started nowhere and ended nowhere. Sometimes we didn't even need to speak. Just a glance was enough to understand one another. Those small rituals were once an essential part of our life together. But lately, those precious moments have vanished without a trace. Now, all he seems to care about is work. Even on weekends, there's no time for the family. He immerses himself in meetings, golf outings, or locks himself in his home office. I know he's a responsible man, a leader under pressure, someone who bears many burdens. But when did those responsibilities become a wall that separates him from his own home? Back then, I used to help him review documents, calculate costs, and plan business strategies. We worked together like true partners, supporting each other through everything. But now, he no longer lets me be part of it. He says he can't trust anyone but himself, and slowly he's pushed me out of everything. I've tried to bring back our old habits. One evening, I brewed tea just like before, placed the 2 cups on the table, and waited for him to join me. But he walked past without even noticing and went straight into his room. I sat there, alone, watching the steam rise and slowly disappear into the air, much like the growing distance between us, colder, further, and more unreachable with each passing day. I started to think that maybe he was just too exhausted, that the pressures of the outside world had caused him to retreat. So I decided to take our son to stay with his grandmother for a few days. I wanted to create a quiet space, just for the 2 of us. I hoped that without the noise of a child, the routines, or the responsibilities of being a father, he might finally relax, unwind, and see me again. That evening, the house became strangely silent. No more tiny footsteps running circles around the living room. No more cheerful little voice calling mommy. I tidied everything, set the table neatly, and prepared dinner carefully, trying to recreate the warm, intimate atmosphere we once shared. In my heart, I held on to a fragile hope that given time alone, we might reconnect. But when he came home, I immediately sensed that things weren't going to unfold the way I imagined. He opened the door, stepped in as usual, tiredly took off his coat, and quietly sat down at the table. He didn't ask where our child was, didn't even seem to notice the change in our surroundings. He just ate, quickly and in silence. I sat across from him, waiting for a glance, a word, any sign at all. But nothing came. Dinner ended in silence, just like so many other nights. He got up, washed his hands, and walked straight into the bedroom. I stayed behind, sitting alone under the dim light, staring at the empty chair. An overwhelming sense of emptiness rose inside me, as if I had tried to build a bridge, but the person on the other side no longer wished to cross. The next morning, I woke up alone. It was still early, the light outside barely breaking through the horizon, yet the space beside me on the bed was already cold. He had left the house without a sound, without leaving a single note. It was the weekend, yet he still chose work over spending any time with me, with his family. That feeling no longer resembled sadness. It felt more like a lingering void, stretching endlessly and silently inside me. I went downstairs and made myself a cup of hot tea, an old habit that now only I continue. The steam rose, the subtle scent of tea filled the quiet kitchen, but it couldn't warm me inside. I sat there for a long time, doing nothing, simply staring out at the front yard, the very spot where we used to sit and talk once our son had fallen asleep. Now, it was just me. The chair across from me was still empty, just like it had been the night before. I felt as though I was slowly fading away inside the very home we built together. Every wall, every little corner once held our memories. But now it was just a place filled with endless silence and unanswered questions. I kept asking myself, when would I see again the man who used to make me smile every morning? That afternoon, I told myself, I can't go on like this. I don't blame him for being tired. I don't resent him for being consumed by work. But I cannot live forever in silence, in invisibility. I need to say what's been weighing on my heart, even if it might hurt us both. The silence has lasted too long, and if it continues, I'm afraid one day we might lose each other completely. When he came home that evening, it was already late. I had prepared everything early. The dish he used to love, the tablecloth he once used on special occasions, and even myself, neat, composed, wearing the dress he once said made me look gentle. I wanted to recreate a sense of familiarity, as if to remind him of the sweet days we once shared. But when he walked into the house, he simply nodded slightly, paying no attention to anything around him. He sat down, took a few bites, and then quietly lowered his head, just like he always did. I sat across from him, filled with anxiety. My hands trembled slightly, and my heart pounded out of rhythm. I didn't know how to start, but I knew deep down, if I didn't speak tonight, I might never have the chance again. I looked at him, searching his face, the face that was once so familiar. Finally, I softly spoke, almost whispering, "Can you spare me a few minutes?" He looked up, a bit surprised. "Now? Yes, just a moment," I replied, my voice gentle, as if afraid that even the sound of my words might shatter something fragile between us. He sat down on the sofa. I tried to stay calm, though a storm was raging inside me. I didn't want to cry, didn't want him to think I was weak or blaming him, but my eyes were already red. I took a deep breath and began slowly. "You've changed lately. We don't talk anymore. I feel like you're looking right through me, like I don't even exist." He didn't respond right away. He lowered his head, silent. In that moment, the room felt frozen in time, and I knew the hardest question in my heart was about to leave my lips, even though the answer might be the one I feared the most. I sat there, waiting for his response, but he remained silent, a silence that made it hard for me to breathe. I gently turned the ring on my finger, trying to summon more courage. Then, with a voice hoarse from holding back emotion, I asked, "Do you still love me?" That question had haunted me for many nights. I didn't want to say it out loud, but if I didn't ask, I would continue living in doubt and loneliness. He looked up at me, his eyes tired, and replied, "Of course I do. I'm just under a lot of stress." I nodded, but deep down I wasn't sure I believed him. There was something in the way he said it that felt distant. Not because he denied loving me, but because of how he said it, quick, cold, like a duty he had to fulfill rather than something from the heart. I was silent for a moment, then looked him straight in the eyes. "Then, is there someone else?" I saw his body stiffen, as if caught off guard. He frowned, shaking his head immediately. "No, there's no one else. What are you thinking? I'm just overwhelmed with work, that's all." He said it quickly, almost as a reflex, but that only made me more confused. If there was no one else, then why did I feel invisible in his eyes? I wanted to believe him, truly, I did. But the change in him couldn't just be about work pressure. He used to share everything with me, so why now did he choose silence? He took my hand gently. "I just need more time. I'll try. Just, please be patient with me a little longer." I nodded, forcing a smile. But deep inside I knew. Waiting is the hardest thing, especially when you're no longer sure if the person you're waiting for will ever really come back. After that evening, I tried to hold on to the hope he had left behind, fragile as it was. He told me to wait, said he would try to change. I agreed, because I still loved him, because I didn't want to give up on everything we once had. I told myself I had to be stronger, more patient, that if I was gentle enough, understanding enough, then maybe things would get better. In the days that followed, I tried harder than ever. I cooked the meals he used to love, waited for him every night so we could have dinner together, always started the conversation before silence had a chance to settle in. I tried to revive our old habits, but he remained the same. Still came home late, still ate quietly, then disappeared into his own world. His eyes stayed dull and tired, his voice distant like a stranger's. I kept comforting myself. He promised to try. I just need to wait a little longer. I cleaned the house, played with our child, tried to keep everything bright and cheerful, even though I was slowly falling apart inside. There were days I smiled widely while hugging our son, but as soon as he turned away, I quietly wiped my tears. I even planned a short trip, just the two of us. No child, no work, no distractions. Somewhere quiet, a place I hoped we could reconnect like we once had. When I suggested the idea, his eyes never left his phone. He just said, "Not now, I've got work, maybe later, next month." I smiled and nodded, but deep inside something quietly broke. Maybe next month would never come, and maybe the man I was waiting for no longer wanted to come back. That night, after our child had fallen into deep sleep, I sat silently in the dark of the living room. The whole house was drowning in a suffocating stillness, broken only by the slow, steady ticking of the clock, like a quiet reminder that time was passing, while my heart remained trapped in some dark, unmoving place. I opened an old photo album, turning each page slowly, as if each one scraped across my chest. The old photos were still there, us together, radiant smiles on our wedding day, holding hands on that long-forgotten beach, his eyes once filled with love and pride as he looked at me. Everything used to be so clear, so close, yet now, they felt like distant memories from another lifetime. I stared at those images and asked myself, when did we lose our connection? When did closeness turn into distance? There were no fights, no shouting, no dramatic tears, just a quiet retreat, day after day. And somehow, that silent unraveling hurt more than anything else. Maybe loving someone isn't enough. Maybe loving alone is what exhausts a person the most. And that night, for the first time, I faced the truth. We were still living under the same roof, but our hearts were no longer in the same place. Another evening, I took our child to stay with his grandmother again. I didn't explain why. I just said I needed some time alone with my husband. Deep down, a fragile thread of hope still lingered in me, believing that in a quiet space, without the sounds of a child, without the weight of responsibility, he might return to me, even if just for a fleeting moment. I sat waiting in the living room, bathed in the soft yellow glow of the lamp. I heard the door open and my heart began to race, but he didn't come into the living room, didn't call my name, didn't ask where our child was. He simply walked straight into his study and closed the door, so gently, yet so coldly. No greeting, not even a glance. I stood still in front of that door, my hand raised about to knock. But then I stopped. I don't know why. Maybe out of fear, maybe exhaustion, or maybe because I had grown too used to the silence. I let my hand fall and turned away, feeling like I had just been rejected, and he hadn't even needed to say a word. I sat again in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a cup of tea gone cold. The house was quiet, yet my heart was filled with noise, of doubt, of hurt, and of a question that no one seemed willing to answer. Does he even see me anymore? The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Beside me, the bed remained untouched. The blanket and pillow showed no sign of anyone having lain there. He had already left, like every other day, quietly, silently, without a single good morning, without even a glance, let alone the gentle kiss he used to give. I just lay there, staring blankly at the ceiling, feeling as though the weight of the whole world was pressing down on my chest. I wasn't angry, nor did I cry. The emotions within me felt like a dried-up river, silent, parched, and empty. There was no sadness or resentment left, only an overwhelming exhaustion. I forced myself to get up and prepare breakfast for our child, putting on a smile like always, as if I were fine, as if everything was normal. But inside, I knew I was slowly breaking apart. That entire day, I lived like a shadow. I cared for our child, cleaned the house, but every action felt like a soulless routine. With each passing minute, I kept asking myself, who am I in this marriage? A wife? a mother, or just a maid in my own home. The feeling of being forgotten had seeped into every cell of my being. This coldness didn't come from a single fight. It was the quiet repetition, dragging on day after day, week after week. I started to realize that some kinds of pain don't need shouting or conflict. Sometimes, silence stretched long enough can kill love just the same. That day, after feeding our child and putting him down for his nap, I sat quietly in the small kitchen, once a warm space for our shared stories, now filled only with the ticking of the clock and a terrifying silence. After a while, I took out a piece of paper and a pen, my heart urging me to write something. Nothing long, nothing poetic, just a few short lines like the fading love between us. I wrote, "I still love you, I still believe in us, but I can't be the only one holding on to this love. I miss your heart more than your presence." I placed the letter on the table, unsure if he would ever read it, but at the very least, for the first time in many months, I had spoken my truth. That evening, when he returned home, I was already waiting by the door. I smiled and gently asked, "Would you like to go for a walk?" There was hope in my eyes, softness in my voice, but in response, he just shook his head, tired. "Not now, Anna, maybe another time." I nodded, still smiling, but deep inside I knew something had just broken. No noise, no tears, just a quiet crack in my heart. I began to understand. Sometimes people don't leave because they stop loving, but because they've stopped being seen.